Morning, everyone. I'd like to speak to us for a few moments on the theme, stay close to Jesus. Stay close to Jesus. Just to repeat for the benefit of our Facebook audience and the recording, our text today is found in Paul's letter to the Philippians, chapter 4, where we find these words. The Lord is near. Do not worry about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. In other words, when times are hard, stay close to Jesus. When the outlook is dim, rejoice in the reality of the presence of the divine. When worry has you overwhelmed, pray your way back to sanity. Stay close to what Jesus means to you. And what Jesus means to you is very, very personal. How you have come to understand this person, this historical figure, this idea. For that's truly what remains. I haven't shaken Jesus' hand, but the writings, the history, what knowledge I have of who he was, what he taught, how he lived, how he died, and what his life and his death has meant to many before me, and what my understanding of his life and death and teaching have meant to my own life. That's what I mean when I say stay close to Jesus. Stay close to what this idea has meant to you in your life. And I very well know that it has meant different things to me at different points in my life. When I was like the children sitting here a few moments ago, I had a Sunday school faith. And then later on in my life, that faith did not serve me any longer. But I was fortunate and blessed to find a professor and a teacher who wasn't afraid to tell me the truth. I went to seminary with nothing more than Sunday school faith. And I was stunned when my professor, and the Jesus Seminar was just really getting started. They were producing a few papers, but they had yet to produce the work, the 5 Gospels, the authentic sayings of Jesus that has become so foundational to progressive Christianity. The book hadn't yet been published, but a lot of the professors were reading the preliminary papers. And so I had a professor who was in touch with the Jesus Seminar, and he was teaching our, New Testament 101 class. And at the end of class, I went up to him and I said, so Jesus didn't walk on the water? And he said, that's right, Madison. And I said, now it makes sense. It was liberating to be freed from my Sunday school faith to rediscover what this person whose impact on the world and the history of the world and the future of the world could possibly mean to me. And so that set me off on a new journey and a new understanding and a new relationship, if you will. So that's what I always recommend to those who come to Pilgrim from the first time. And sometimes we have, what do they call them now? I don't mean to pick on anybody, but it's a new name. They call them ex-evangelicals who have, again, that's part of even my journey of faith, that you come through that and you leave because it doesn't serve you anymore. In the same way, my Sunday school faith no longer served me. And at each step and journey, we don't bail out, but we continue that journey. I always recommend to folk who come to progressive Christianity really trying to sort out their faith and what their faith can mean, that most important book, Marcus Borg, one of our progressive Christian saints, if you will, Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time. If you haven't read it, read it. And then his second book, Reading the Bible Again for the First Time. And all that means is we come back with fresh eyes and with a new life experience to understand what Jesus and what the Bible can mean for us at this stage of our life, now that we've either graduated or dropped out of Sunday school. I'm not sure which. So stay close to that which has given you hope and strength. Stay close to what Jesus means to you, and an inexplicable, that is a faith that defies intellectual elucidation, a faith that surpasses all human understanding, will grant you peace. Peace will flow from the divine straight into your life. And this peace from the divine realm will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. Christian faith has been a beneficial reality to humankind across the millennia in circumstances of the most horrific suffering and pain. Those who have never really suffered have a hard time understanding this phenomenon of faith. And many who do suffer have not or have yet to grasp the blessings to which millions, yea, billions across the millennia have testified. Paul's letter to the Philippians is this reality's most eloquent evidence. Imprisoned and condemned to death, Paul exudes a kind of confidence, hope, and equanimity that eludes those who do not have his depth of faith. You might say, when God is all you've got, God is all you've got. And so you might as well double down on God. In their excellent study, In Search of Paul, Dominic Crossan and Jonathan Reed describe Paul in spiritual terms. Quote, mystics are those who experience union with the holy itself. They live completely in that state to which God invites everyone. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. Also, with all your intellect, your mind, and all your will, and with all your life, and with all your death. Ecstatics are those who experience the altered state of consciousness known as trance, a possibility that, like dreaming, seems to be hardwired into our brains. Ecstatic trance can be achieved in many ways. From church, now see, T and Nikki were trying to take us there. And if we had one of those good old Hammond B3s to get us going into the full rhythm, I think we might have some trance going on up in here. But if you've been in that kind of church space, you know what we're talking about. So from church to laboratory, i.e. pharmacy, from meditation, meditation, from meditation to medication, can someone say peyote? It's not just a faith's theology, but also the brain's chemistry that allows us to experience the divine in this ecstatic way. And they go on to say, there is nothing more powerful than theology corroborated by chemistry. Now, mysticism and ecstasy are not synonymous, and one can be either, neither, or both. As far as we can tell, Paul was both an ecstatic and a mystic. And ecstatic mysticism is absolutely fundamental for any understanding of Paul. When Paul writes to the Galatians and says, "It is no longer I who live, but it is Christ who lives in me," we must take his statement as literally as possible. Because Paul, as an ecstatic mystic, experiences his relationship to Christ with such a blurred distinction and inside such a combined identity that for Paul, he means that literally. His life has ended and Christ has inhabited his body, his life, and that's how he sees the world. But he sees his world shaped in this way. In a world where identity was often shaped by one's relationship to the empire, to Rome, by being, as it were, in Rome. Insisting on a self-definition exclusively by being in Christ was subversive at best and treasonous at worst. That's why I often want to remind us when we read Paul and he's encouraging his parishioners and reminding them that anyone who says Jesus is Lord is your sibling in faith. We hear that with this kind of evangelical, modern evangelical overlay. But no, that's not how they meant it. As we remind you, when the earliest Christians said Jesus is Lord, that was tantamount to saying Caesar is not. And if you stood up in the Roman Empire and said Caesar is not Lord, not my God, is not divine to me, that was treason. And so their way of saying all of that, their slogan, as it were, that summed up their faith and their relationship to the empire was Jesus is Lord, not Caesar. And so we have to reappropriate what it means that when we accept that Jesus and his teachings, his way of living, and what he means in the world, and what he means for all of the powers and principalities against which we fight, that when we claim that faith, we are standing in stark opposition to capitalism and imperialism and materialism and consumerism and all the isms. We have to regain that radical, sharp edge of what it means to be a Christian. Let me put it this way. Think of the intensity of the debate and even the battle to define and describe what it means and who gets to be in America, an American. Wars have been fought. I think they called it the Civil War, as we struggle to redefine what it means to be in America or an American. And when you challenge the identity of a nation or the identity of a people, there can be hell to pay. And that's why Paul was in prison, and that's why he was condemned to death. Paul actually thinks that only mystics can be Christians, or that all Christians must be mystics, because unless you can tap into that power, it's impossible to fulfill the life that Jesus calls us to. This explains why the consolation in the midst of suffering and hardship that Paul speaks of is so incomprehensible to most first world, that's us, wealthy, that's us, comfortable, that's us, so-called Christians. As essential as having a mystical dimension to our faith is to being a Christian, so is the capacity to experience and know and transcend suffering. This explains why the suffering, the poor, les misérables, or to put it in the classic phrase of Frantz Fanon, the wretched of the earth, seem to be in a constant yet ironic state of ecstasy. Those that we deem least likely to experience any joy seem to have more joy than those that ought to have joy. It is this faith that grants the wretched of the earth, the poor and the oppressed, relief from the pain of the dehumanizing powers arrayed against them. Yes, that is the opiate of the people. But you know what? People need opium. That's what you get in the hospital. Opium serves a function, but what you don't want to do is stay on opium. But it serves a function. It relieves the pain of the dehumanizing power arrayed against them. But it also, this peace that passes understanding, grants them the pleasure that the humanizing power of the Spirit endows. It inoculates them against the pain of the dehumanizing powers of oppression, and it grants them the pleasure that the humanizing power of the Spirit gives. Or in the Pauline way of putting it, do not worry about anything. That's what he says to people in prison, condemned on death row. That's what he says to people who are suffering unimaginable pain with no hope for their future. He says, with clear eyes and true faith, do not worry about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This total mystical ecstasy, experienced in the blurred distinction and inside combined identity of being in Christ, it explains why enslaved Africans could take an oppressive, stale European theology and transform it into a joyful, soulful faith of liberation. It was this mystical ecstasy that allowed Martin Luther King Jr. to proclaim on the very night before his assassination these words: "It really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land." He could say that on the night before he knew. We'll never know whether he knew, but he was assassinated the next day. Oh yes, he lived under constant threat of assassination and death. The threats of harm to him were so constant that the only way that he could live each day and do the work that he was doing was to what? Not worry about anything, but in everything with faith, with prayer and supplication, and allow the peace of God to wash over him. He knew that his life would end before victory was had, but he still used the pronoun "we will get there." That's what they mean by this inside identity. In other words, it is this mystical ecstasy that allows us to live when there is no ostensible reason to even want to live. It is this mystical ecstasy that allows abused children and abused intimate partners to survive and then thrive when they do. That is why it is the depth of perversion when religious authorities use the facade of faith to justify their abuse of those upon whom they prey. P-R-E-Y, not P-R-A-Y. But opposed to their abuse are the hearts and minds of their survivors, guarded by the peace of Christ that testify against and convict them of their sacrilegious crimes. Paul was imprisoned and condemned, yet faithful and at peace. Because as he would say, if we live to the Lord. And if we die to the Lord. So then, whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's. It is that kind of total freedom that allows us to commit to the cause of justice. It is that kind of total selflessness and trust that whatever happened, God's got our back, that allows us to give beyond our personal means, to share beyond our resources, to live the faith that is beyond human understanding. And in the midst of it all, to find joy in the midst of a world that works against joy in every possible way, is therefore a spiritual discipline. It is also a survival strategy for those whose material resources are insufficient to provide any meaningful, tangible escape from the pain and suffering they endure. And so, the ultimate irony of life, the spiritual path to joy, is available to all who are unburdened by the physical baggage of wealth and power. This third Sunday of Advent is designated the Sunday of joy, encouraging us to experience joy in anticipation of the coming of the Christ. For indeed, if we can experience joy in the expectation of the peace of God, then it matters less when it actually gets here. And at the same time, that joy we experience against all factual indications is the very power that fuels the transformation of the world and hastens the day when our joy is a reality. So whatever you are facing, you may need abortion care, but you live in Texas. You may want democracy, but you live in the shadow of Putin's Russia. You may want to vote, but every election law passed makes it more and more difficult. You may want to live and feed your family, but a national border separates you from the God-given bounty of this earth that would allow you and your family to prosper. Whatever your circumstances, Paul preaches that we do not lose heart. Even though our outer nature is wasting away, our inner nature is being renewed day by day. And for this slight momentary affliction is just preparing us for an eternal weight of glory beyond all measure. Whatever you are facing in your personal, family, national, or global life, our faith encourages us to stay close to Jesus and let our faith guard our hearts and minds and put our lives in the hands of the Anointed One. Let the people of God say, amen.